So they're controlled by. Do you ever see that? Of course you've seen it. I shouldn't even ask you. That documentary, The Corporation?
Yes, great.
That's a frightening documentary where it talks about how corporations basically act like sociopaths, and that because of there's a gigantic diffusion of responsibility when you have all these people doing something that's...
Yeah, it's compartmentalized, and so they all share the blame. None of them stab the people in the heart themselves. They collectively do it with blinders on, and so...
And they say it's all for business.
And then
doing it in business, in the name of business.
I agree, and then you can't ever stop them because you go punish one of them, but it's the cellular organization, kind of like what you said an hour ago or 45 minutes ago, that it's this communal thing, and so you can't ever beat the whole compartmentalized system because you can only attack certain pieces of it.
Right, and there's so much vested interest in keeping that corporation alive. There's so many mortgages attached to that corporation. There's so many kids that are in private school attached to that corporation. There's so many, credit card bills. They want to keep that organization alive. That's a giant community. And what it is really, with any organization like that is like an organism. It's like we have this gigantic organism that's the human race, and inside we have little substructures. And we have cities, and we have mayors and all that jazz. But corporations are like their own little substructure.
Well, take the police. They now are just militarizing, doubling, tripling, quadrupling their numbers, growing wildly, and it's all about protecting themselves now, not the public. It's all about, quote, the officers in their system. And
well, the crazy thing about the cops is the ones who are doing all the work aren't even the ones that, the cops that are out there, that are driving on the streets and are arresting people, and if they're really working for the New World Order, they're us. They're getting screwed more than anything.
Oh, I agree. I say
they're
that.
Being forced. They're not making money out of it. It's not like cops are getting rich.
No, I agree.
Being a cop is a dangerous job.
They do it for the system.
There's a lot of scumbags out there.
Yeah, well, most cops mean well, but have been given a false template. They believe when they take a teenager to jail for some marijuana that it's a good thing.
But I think because of the fact that most cops mean well, I think ultimately it's going to be very hard to have a police state because they'd be policing their own people. They'd be policing themselves.
Well, Joe, I got stories here. I got stories here where a woman's drinking a glass of water in a wine glass with her child, and after going to the dentist, and they pull her over in Phoenix and go ahead and take her to jail. And
she might have been a douchebag. You ever think of that?
So she deserved it.
Might have been a crazy pain in the ass. They might have pulled her over, and she might have said a bunch of dumb stuff and yelled at the cop. And
so she deserves it?
And she might have been drunk. She might have been doing coke. She might have smoked a joint. Who knows?
Well,
I don't know that lady.
She might be a mass murderer, executor.
But let me tell you something. Every time I get pulled over by cops, you know what I say? Sorry, sir. Here's my license. Here's my registration. You know how many times I've been arrested? 0. You know why? Because I respect cops. I know a lot of cops from jiu-jitsu. I know a lot of cops from all my years of training martial arts. I've met a lot of them, and they're just dudes. They're dudes who want to
Well, I totally agree that
they have a very stressful, screwed-up job.
It's a compartmentalization, Joe, is what I'm saying. But there's no doubt
that if a lady gets pulled over drinking a glass of water and they lock her in a cage, maybe there's some more to the story. Maybe that lady's crazy.
Well, it was in the Phoenix newspaper, so it's all broken down.
Well, if it's in the Phoenix newspaper, it doesn't mean she's not a nut.
Well, we're going to be getting her on.
She could easily be a nut. It's a good story to put in the Phoenix newspaper.
But
it's a good version, her version of it.
Okay, have you heard police are now running checkpoints, taking blood, Joe?
Listen, I've seen a lot of videos on YouTube of cops tasering dudes for no reason at all. I'm with you that sometimes things go horribly wrong, and that those dudes are under a constant amount of stress, and sometimes when people don't comply, they have just heard enough, and they pull out that taser and they blast them, and it makes for a very funny video online. I've seen it happen.
But Joe, it's getting worse. Here's the deal.
Worse. But you're not supposed to give dudes tasers.
I understand.
You're not supposed to give them a middle option. It's like, you remember in Star Trek, they had the gun that was set to stun or to kill? Look, it should only be kill. All right? You shouldn't be spanking people. I mean, people aren't children.
I agree.
You don't spank kids and you don't taser people.
Joe, I want to shift gears.
Take someone out is if they're dangerous, and you should kill them. You should just blast them.
Joe Rogan.
Off the planet.
Joe Rogan, JoeRogan.net. I want to get Burmison in for a minute because he's a big fan of Ultimate Fighting, big fan of yours, and he was one of the guys that made Loose Change. Go ahead and say hi to him.
Hey, Joe. How you doing?
What's going on, man?
You want to say anything about 9/11 to him?
I just wanted to check out, he should check out the Amalgam Virgo document. He talked about the Northwoods document, but Amalgam Virgo was the drill that they ran in June 1st and 2nd of 2001, where they actually drilled ramming a hijacked airliner into the Capitol building while other attacks were going on.
And the World Trade Center and Pentagon.
Yeah, and it had a second part where they were actually going to do live fly hijack exercises where they were going to have FBI agents on deck with a flight crew and then divert the planes to Alaska. So yeah,
and then tell him, which is in Northwoods, but tell him Springman, the head of the embassy, was told these are U.S. government agents, let the hijackers back in.
Yeah, well, we
just interviewed him again for this new film.
Yeah, in the new film Fabled Enemies, we have J. Michael Springman, who was the consulate at Jeddah in the visa department. His job was to give people visas or not give people visas, and his thing was he was not giving a lot of these people visas, and then his superiors would be like, no, you need to give them a visa, and he was like, why? And they'd say, well, it's national security purposes. And then he talked to some of his buddies at the CIA, and they let him know that this was actually a program to bring Islamic militants into the United States to work with their asset, Osama bin Laden. And, the interview is just awesome.
Now, did you just hear that, Joe?
Yes, I did, and that's if that's true, that's really scary. And you know what? I believe it probably could be true very easily. Now, here's my question, though. If there is something like this that happened, say if 9/11 was this gigantic staged act and that they had set it up in advance and somehow or another had rigged the gigantic building so that they would, be, what is it, thermate, so it cuts through the middle and it brings the buildings down, that's the speculation, right?
Yes.
How many people had to be involved?
About 100. We broke it down to about 120. Stay there. We're going to talk behind the scenes for Infowars.com, folks, and for people watching at PrisonPlanet.tv with Joe Rogan. Then we'll be back for another 5-minute segment, another 5 after that. Then he's going to ride shotgun with us with Vincent Bulagosi. Stay with us. This is the GCN Radio Network. Again, we'll continue behind the scenes right now. Joe, I appreciate your incredible courage to say you're even questioning it. But what I'm telling you is this was the head of the embassy, and there's another guy who was the head of another embassy section in Canada, not just in Saudi Arabia, saying they were told, hey, these are government agents, assets, let them in. And we're talking Muhammad Atta.
Well, one of my favorite things about that Alex, is that the FBI had 2 of these guys staying with an asset. In other words, Khalid al-Madar and Nawaf al-Zahami were actually staying with an FBI informant that was handled by an agent named Stephen Butler.
And that was in San Diego.
Yeah, he was living with them in San Diego. Now, the official line is that they didn't even know that they were on the terrorism watch list till about 2 days after the attack because they were in the United States illegally. But then you find out about Abel Danger, and 2 of these guys, the 2 guys that were living with the FBI informant, were 2 of the guys that Abel Danger had actually identified.
Joe, here's what happened. These were government agents. We know they even did mock drills. That's what James Woods saw. They got on board. Nerve gas was released. The few real calls we've got off air phones are the stewardesses going, I can't breathe. Something's in here. And then they were remote controlled, sir. That we know.
Have copies of those things?
Yeah, no, I mean, we've got the transcripts. The government's released it and said,
There's the MP3s are out there. You can listen to some of them.
In fact, I've heard one of them with a lady going,
MP3s out there of these women.
Yeah.
Can't breathe.
They basically say that there's gas in the back and that they're having trouble breathing. They're pretty short conversations.
What do you guys think happened? Do you believe that it was a remote-controlled airplane?
We know. These guys were U.S. government agents. Case closed. The government all goes... they were government agents, protected, brought in. They were doing drills of takeovers. The government was having drills, not just in June, but the day of the event. They get on board. Nerve gas is released. They flip all the transponders off and remote control them in.
Well, Joe, we were actually able last August to get NORAD's tape so we could listen to what they were hearing.
And then you got arrested for that. They then came and SWAT teamed you. Yeah.
Well, that did happen, but whatever. Basically, they had about 20 different hijackings that day.
You just whatevered a SWAT team arrest?
Yeah, they came and grabbed Corey because they were on base. They scanned the place.
How big are your balls?
Well, whatever.
Whatevered a SWAT team arrest.
Well,
yeah, they came with machine guns. Whatever. What?
That's just life, man.
You're making these documentaries, dude. I'm not sure if you really recognize what's going on here.
Hey, someone's got to do it. But I do want to point out again, they had other hijackings. They had hijackings coming out of Canada after the Flight 93 was down. They called up Cheyenne Mountain and said, hey, you need to turn off these inputs on the drills because we can't tell which planes are actual hijackings. They had a hijacking out of Korea Airlines. They had a threat against Air Force One that day. Somehow these supposed hijackers had gotten all the secret codes to the NSA, the Secret Service, the FBI, the CIA that morning.
Joe, I'll tell you what, we got Bugliosi coming on for like 30 minutes. Joe has graciously said he'll stay with us all another hour. Why don't you come in after he's gone?
You got it.
Okay, here we go live.